Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our December Talent Lens. We are so excited to start that today, and it's our last one of the year. So, hope y'all enjoy it. We have a little bit of a different format today, and we're really excited to get started. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Swathi Garg. I'm the founder and CEO of Milo Associates. Been in the space for a long time, and have been lucky enough to be recognized in a lot of different places. So we are Milo Associates. We focus on revenue protection and expansion roles. So that's the entire customer success umbrella. So support, professional services, sales leadership roles, all of that. Working mostly with small to medium-sized SaaS and tech companies, but also some other industries now too, as the whole world is expanding and it's really exciting. Um, we really focus on we have actually multiple services. And if you guys do follow us on LinkedIn or on any of our socials, you'll know that we did a huge launch last week. So, or maybe, gosh, actually 2 weeks ago. Sorry, time flies with Thanksgiving. A couple weeks ago. And these are original services. So traditionally, we did full search, just like a recruiting firm. We have on-demand resume services, which is basically helping internal teams. Find great people through the applicants they're getting because a lot of these companies are getting hundreds and thousands of applications, but just struggling with looking through all of them. So we help them do that. So it's our full service without the external search and sourcing. And then we also have our CCO program, which is like interim and advisory and fractional work. But as of a couple of weeks ago, we have a bunch of new services that I want to spend a minute to talk about. We're really, really excited, and we're moving away from being a traditional recruiting firm and moving directly into being what we're calling the ultimate hiring hub. So, as you all know, we are still hyper focused in the revenue protection expansion space. So, we're not taking away our niche, but we are expanding how we're helping. So, we've really ultimately divided the full search process and created multiple different services that can help internal teams at different points of the search process. So we can help them actively source people and just find them people. We can just have review applications. We can review and audit their job description or the interview process and help companies internally that way. We can just do some consulting calls and help them with the talent acquisition process that way. And then we also actually have created, this is really my brainchild, and I'm super excited about the employee mobility program. It's helping internal teams really fill open requisitions with their internal talent. This is mostly with, mid-sized to larger companies where they have all this amazing talent, and it's a great way to move internal talent, promote internal talent, and keep internal talent, and while giving them different opportunities. So this is something that we're really excited about too. It's a brand new, so that's something you want to talk about, let me know. But we haven't forgotten about the job seekers, and we actually have created job search coaching for the first time. So if you have like burning job search questions, you can take some time with Lindsay or I, and we will be happily spend some time with you and answer those questions or look over your resume or anything that will help you that may be maybe where you may be feeling stuck in the job search. So we're really, really excited about that. So let me know if you have any questions on any of that today or in general. So we are so excited. Actually, I'm going to toggle back real quick. We are so excited to have Kat here today. So Kat and I have actually been connected through LinkedIn over 2 years ago. So Kat is a pure connection that I connected with on LinkedIn, and we've stayed in touch and had multiple conversations over the last couple of years. And I've learned so much from her, and I found her experience so fascinating that I really wanted to highlight highlighted in today's webinar. As you know, she's come from a VC background and she's actually gone back to industry. And we don't see that very often. And she has that like multifaceted lens. And we actually are changing up the format today a little bit, where we're going to give obviously Kat an opportunity to introduce herself and really share her story on why she made the transition. And we're going to go into directly into a fireside chat and make it a little bit of a longer fireside chat. We'll still have plenty of time for questions, so please make sure to come and add your questions to the Q&A. We'll definitely get them in and make sure everyone has their questions answered. But we're really excited about Kat coming in today. Kat, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story with us. And we can't wait to hear more. And I'm going to kind of hand it off to you, but please introduce yourself and then kind of dig into your story.
Yeah, thanks, Swati. So I am a customer success manager currently at an AI startup called Glean. We market ourselves as basically work AI, which is AI, a AI work assistant. I joined when we were sub 130, and we're now approaching 650. So very hyper growth startup. And I oversee our kind of enterprise book of business. I have about 20, 25, 27 customers in that space. And it's been very exciting. Prior to that, I was at Sequoia Capital. I did two different, kind of very different roles there, actually. One was an executive recruiter, and then the other was on the IT side, which I will definitely get into more about that transition and then the transition into back to industry. And yeah, I'm excited to kind of talk more about that whole journey.
So,
So,
Kat,
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
no, go for it.
No, no, no. I was going to say, I would love for you to introduce. So, Kat and I actually spend a lot of time talking about, what would be a great topic and how to really share her story with our audience today. So, can you talk a little bit about why you're so passionate about this topic specifically before we get into your story?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, it's very personal to me. And I think for anyone just considering their career and if they want to join a VC, kind of consider why they want to do that and some reasons to kind of think about before actually getting in there, because it's very different on the inside than the outside. And then also like if you are in the VC, obviously you might have been an operator in a company. They're kind of different in how you operate with both. But I think I've always been an operator at heart, and so that's one of the reasons I wanted to go back. But yeah, this is, career journeys are very personal, very different for each person. So what I really kind of want people to take away from this is what to consider for themselves and their own career journeys too. And maybe they'll resonate with some of the decisions I made and the reasons I made them.
Thank you. So, Kat, you have the floor.
Awesome. So if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll notice I have some logos on there that I'm sure everyone can recognize. I actually started my career journey at JP Morgan Chase Bank. I was a teller. So at the very front, like the very bottom rung of the ladder, there it was right after the crash. Not a lot of people were hiring. So these were kind of the only jobs. Actually, Matt Wale there, he's on the webinar. So hi Wale, shout out to my Chase peeps. But very quickly worked up the ladder. And I think one of the common things people take away from their career journeys is it's not linear. So while it felt very linear at Chase, I went from a teller to a banker to a manager, and ended up moving into the corporate side, finished there as a senior corporate trainer, supporting all of Northern California for our frontline tellers and new managers, and training them on the company systems, how to, talk like a Chase banker. Not all career paths are that kind of trajectory. And of course, mine definitely changed. It went from being, straight and to the right to this twisty turny thing. So from there, I went into a startup within Google. So it was still felt like a very much like a startup. It was called Google Express, and weird, very weird for me to go from this very corporate structured environment to this very unstructured startup-like environment, but really good learning experience on kind of how to behave in a startup, even though it was still under the Google umbrella. It felt like a startup. So spent 2 years contract there and learned a lot. I was still training. I was training new hires on the systems and how to use the proprietary system that we had for the operations piece. I did a lot of feedback to product on that and created a lot of training materials and documentation. So I still felt very much like a trainer, and that was my kind of role. That's how I saw myself. Um, and then when my contract ended, I actually started teaching yoga full time. Um, I loved it. However, obviously, it does not pay the bills, and I was still living in the Bay Area. But it allowed me time to consider what I wanted to do next in my career. Um, Lots of mindful yoga sessions on that. I also ended like a very long-term relationship, so it was a very big change for me in my life, and I wanted to do something different. I know I loved teaching yoga and wanted to continue doing that. I felt like the trainer job that I was doing, like a corporate trainer, was too similar, and I wanted a different kind of feel to what I was doing in my actual career. So my outside hobby type stuff I could do, and they weren't be the same kind of feel and role throughout like both my daytime job and what I wanted to do in my free time. So as I'm like considering this, doing a lot of yoga on it, I thought maybe something like an office manager or something would be interesting. And I'm applying all these places. It took me like about 4 months before I was actually ready to rejoin the workforce, and then a couple months as I'm like applying and trying to find roles that really spoke to me. And while I'm doing that, a recruiter actually reached out. And so kind of new to me. I had never worked with like a third-party recruiting service before. She had sourced me. I was like trying to get my resume out there. I don't know how she sourced me, but I was so fortunate that she did because she was like, "Well, have you tried recruiting?" And I was like, "No, never thought about it." But again, was doing a lot of yoga, mindfulness approach, and I was like, "But you know what? I think that makes a lot of sense because." In my roles at Chase and Google, I was doing a lot of new hire onboarding training. And it was basically the step after recruiting. So I was doing a lot of skills matching. I was doing a lot of feedback to managers on, how to work with this person or challenges I might have experienced with this person or what I've noticed about this person and how they behave at their new role. So I felt like this was probably a pretty good skills match and ended up saying, "Yeah, interested. Let's talk more." And she ended up being a recruiter for Sequoia Capital. I had not known what the VCs were really. I knew banking, but the venture capital world was kind of all new to me. So I wasn't super familiar with what I was getting into. Definitely learned that really quickly. So she was recruiting for the it was called Human Capital at the time. We rebranded as Talent while I was there, but the talent team at Sequoia Capital. Um, and it seemed kind of entry level. I'd been in my career for over 7 years. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to what I felt like take a step back, but it still sounded interesting enough that I took the chance and joined Sequoia Capital. As at the time it was I think they just called me a recruiting coordinator. I don't even know what the title was. Quickly moved into an executive recruiter role. So fortunately I took the chance and they did see that I was more than just a recruiting coordinator, or I had the skill set to do more than that. So I did the executive recruiting for a while, and I supported our G&A side of of the business. So what I was doing was full cycle recruiting. I'm sure Swati is very familiar with this whole process. And it was for executives across finance, HR, and operations. So I was looking for basically director and above, doing sourcing, reaching out. Fortunately, with the Sequoia name, I was able to get a lot of responses back. I know that's not always the case in recruiting. And so I had a really good response rate. I met with a lot of executives, brought a lot of business and new talent into Sequoia Capital, and referred that back into our portfolio companies. We had a lot of portfolio companies, a lot of different roles to fill, and a lot of those roles were the first finance hire or the first HR hire. So we were also consulting along those lines of what to think of, who to ask, what to look for when to make this hire. So I really became a consultant on this type of talent for our portfolio. I liked the role a lot, but we also got our own executive coaches. And during that time, I did a values assessment with my executive coach because while I liked the role, I was exhausted. I talked to, 100 plus people every day or every week or every month. And I just did not feel fulfilled, even though I would, send them out to companies, place them at companies. I didn't feel very fulfilled in my role. And so when I'm talking to this executive coach, what we did was we did a values assessment. And this is what I stand by, and this is what I advise anyone who's thinking about career and what to do is to take a values assessment. Because when you know what you value, you're able to understand where there's alignment and where there's misalignment in your job or your role. And so I was able to understand the work I like to do, the work I value, the work that energizes me is very much problem solving and helping people find solutions to problems and solutioning problems. And the recruiting side is a lot of pattern matching and connecting dots. It's not necessarily, I don't see it as the exact same. And Swati, you might have a different opinion, but I don't see it totally as like problem solving. And then I also like to go super deep with my relationships and build really strong and long lasting. As you can see, Wale is here. We've known each other for like 10 years. So I like those types of relationships. And with recruiting, you don't always get that kind of relationship. A lot of it is very fleeting. A lot of it is very tangential, or I felt like a give get kind of thing where, I want to build these kind of long lasting stuff. So doing that, I was like, okay, I don't see alignment in my role. But what I do like to do, because you wear a lot of hats in a VC. They're small. There's not a lot of people that just do one thing. And so I was also the recruiting operations person. I was building out our reports. I implemented a new ATS and was working through kind of problems with that and kind of how to figure out how to kind of operationalize what we were doing. And I really like that side of it. I was working very closely with our tech services team, and I was like, oh man, I like technology. I really want to join technology, like the technology side, and get more into this side of the business. So was able to make the switch there, and I was able to get into a role where I was still kind of doing the new hire onboarding, but I was showing them our technology because we had a proprietary system. So there was like a lot of overlap in what I was doing at Chase, which had a proprietary system and showing people how to use that, but then also solving their problems and trying to find ways for them to, in technology, to fit with their work problems and how to kind of make those, operationalize those in a way that was more productive. And in doing so, I discovered a really cool tool that is now called Glean. At the time, it was enterprise search. So my IT manager and we did what we called a blue sky session. So we whiteboarded what our ideal state of this kind of technology would be, and then kind of worked our way back into, well, if this is our ideal state, where can we find a technology that kind of either fits this ideal state or gets 80 to 90% of the way there. And in this blue sky session, we discovered enterprise search is probably what we need. We also talked about this AI bot that knew all of our company language and documentation and was able to answer company specific questions. That's now Glean. That was not available at the time, but with the rise of generative AI, it's now the company I'm still working for. So that was really cool. And yeah, so we sourced a lot of these companies and ended up settling on what today is Glean. Sequoia was not an investor at the time. I really love the product. And one thing I would always kind of tell people I worked with at Sequoia. I love Sequoia, but I'm not a Sequoia lifer. And in VCs, there are the lifers, and then there are the people that kind of go back and forth between the VC and operating in the industry. And I was definitely one of those people that was like, I want to go back and be an operator. Um, and so once Sequoia invested in the Series C of Glean, I found my opportunity to go back into that operator role with a product and company I was really excited about. So sorry, I took a lot of time about my journey, Swati, but hopefully that kind of set the stage for the fireside chat and where I came from.
No, that's fantastic. I'm so glad you did. It's so interesting to kind of hear about. I didn't know about the yoga side, and your whole journey there. So I love that. And I also think that it's a really good, I think people know this, but it's a really good reminder that you don't really know where your path is going to go. And, there's going to be bumps and breaks and, a lot of effort, but a little bit of luck, right? I think the
Luck is
reach out, right? And also, that's a huge plug for recruiters. We do find great people that are great fits, right? So I do love that. I thank you so much for sharing. I absolutely love that. I have a ton of questions for you. One thing I do want to add, I think that I what I found really interesting is your perspective on recruiting, right? When you were talking about, you're like, I don't feel like it's problem solving, and you're like, there's a lot of give and get, and I think that's very different from like internal to external search, right? So like for us externally, right, we're very consultative, and we have long lasting relationships with our clients for years, and the community we've known for years. So I do think that everyone's experience is a little different. And I think with external, like we do get a lot of those things that I feel like that you maybe felt like you were missing, right? So I don't know. I do love it. I do love it, everyone. And I do feel like I've built great relationships through it. But I think with recruiting, just like anything else, I think it really is everyone has their own experience. And whether and internal and external, I do think make a big difference, I think, and just kind of how you work, right? But it's awesome because I've seen multiple people go from recruiting to customer success. And I think that that's probably why it's so fun to recruit for as well. And people don't realize there's a lot of similar skill sets and personalities, and we understand it really, really well. So that's really fun. I love that. Um, I want to start off with a few questions that I'm really excited to ask you. So, you talked a little bit about this already, but I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper into like what like really drove your decision to transition from Sequoia Capital to being, an operator at Glean. Because ultimately you said you waited until the investment came, and then you're like, okay, this is my opportunity. So what was that?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. It was a few things actually. One was I went back to the values assessment, and there was a misalignment on I think what the company. So originally with my values assessment, I was role focused, and there was misalignment in the role I was doing and kind of what I wanted to do. So that like prompted me to change roles. And then this was like a step up. It was like I felt like there was a bit of a misalignment in the values of the company I was working for and the values I wanted to find in a company. Not to say that like, Sequoia does not have values. It's got great values. I think what they're in the business of is, investing, right? Which is money and getting returns on investments for our amazing limited partners to use that to do great work. It just did not feel like I was the one that was impacting all of this, right? It's a lot of the companies that the investors do. And I wanted to be able to build something and feel like I was a part of something that was doing it. It was just a little too tangential for me. Especially since the work I was doing on the technology side was more in support of Sequoia as a whole, like the investors and their workflows and this finance team and their workflows in the market. So that was more supporting all the work that they were doing versus, as an operator in a company, you are, impacting that business specifically. And so that's where I found a misalignment and was like, okay, so I recognized that. And then it's it's a small boutique firm. Not a lot of growth trajectory there as far as like what I wanted to do was again go back to that up and to the right kind of trajectory in my career where I can grow into executive leadership type roles. That was kind of not going to happen at the point in Sequoia when you have one VP and one CIO, and while I was chief of staff to the CIO, it's like there's not there's not a lot of places I can go from there as far as career growth. So those were kind of the two biggest drivers for me.
Awesome. And I think that like makes a really good point for people, right? I think that like you could work for a phenomenal company, but if you're not getting the growth that you're looking for, the experience or the responsibilities that you want or need in your next step, it unfortunately like means that you either have to get creative or you need to potentially look externally, right? So I think that's like a really, really good point for people as well. So, I guess what advice would you offer? I mean, there might be less people in this bucket, but people wanting to move from like a VC to an operational role. Like, what advice do you have, like, as they're kind of thinking about that?
Yeah, it's the impact you want to have and how you want to do it. If you're an investor at a VC, you're going to have a higher impact. B- but there's not that role really inside of inside of a standard company. Um, I always kind of equate investors to like the sales org. So those are kind of like how I look at them. The sales folks at a company are the ones that are really driving it forward and trying to get the new business and build up the capital that the company makes. So investors are basically that, but they have a slightly different like interactions with companies because they're looking to invest versus like looking to get them to buy. So but they're very similar in that sense. So yeah, it's impact. If you're inside a VC and not an investor, you're going to have less impact in, I think, what happens with that company. And then back to values, like what kind of value alignment do you find with the VC versus what company like that you want to join does? Um, yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Also, I'm starting to see some questions come in, but feel free to continue to please add questions. We'll get to them in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So, okay, awesome. Thank you. Are there, just from a hiring perspective, right? So I think the obviously the transition, the career transition piece is super interesting, but you've also seen hiring on both sides now. And I think you're have a lot of obviously exposure to hiring at your current company as well, right? So what are like the critical skill sets you prioritize, when you're hiring for like VC backed companies versus like internally now?
I love this question. I was actually thinking about this morning, Swati. I was like, um, so the best success I had when I was recruiting for our portfolio was learning about kind of people's backgrounds, right? Because like people on paper aren't people in person. And so as a recruiter, you really need to vet out people not just from their on paper, but also from talking to them. My best referrals into the portfolio were the not looking good on paper people. But when I talked to them, what I found, and I think my two examples have this in common, they're entrepreneurial or kind of risk taking drive.
Yep.
So venture-backed companies, there's risk, and not everyone is going to be comfortable with that. Not everyone has that kind of very entrepreneurial drive where they want to like be a part of it and take that risk and see what happens. And so, but when I talked to the two people I'm thinking of, one ended up being the chief people officer at Zoom before they went public. I made that referral was her it was her entrepreneurial spirit. And the other person, and Wale, I think had to leave, but again, entrepreneurial spirit is great for venture-backed companies, even if their on paper doesn't look that great. If they have that drive, if they either owned a business or tried to take a chance on it, their own kind of business, that's always very exciting to see, and that always does well in a venture-backed company because these are all risk takers that are just trying to make their dream happen.
I completely agree. That's what we look for as well. I think people that are excited about the journey and the drive and the growth, right? Like that's what we're looking for as well. So I love that that's aligned. Um, does like does the hiring your process differ in your opinion from like working, at more like early stage startups or like working with early stage startups to more like mature companies in your
Yeah, definitely.
perspective?
Like the super early ones were really dependent on contacts from like either their network or the VC network. Um, those were the ones that I partnered with the most. Once they got into, 500 plus, 1,000 plus series DCE or DEF, worked less and less with those. And that's actually was another part of doing executive recruiting at Sequoia was meeting amazing executive recruiters like Swati yourself and other firms, especially the boutique ones that had specialization in those roles. And we would recommend those to our later stage portfolios, as well as kind of the early ones, depending on what role they're like the C level, um, just to get that expertise and that really consultative approach into getting the right talent into their companies. Larger companies can do this on their own, or they might even have their own executive recruiting team internally to do that. But there was, yeah, definitely a range there.
That's so interesting. So basically what you're saying is you basically did a lot of your support to the early stage companies, and helping them primarily with your networks and the contacts. That was
That's
like
right.
really what
I
you.
was their, I was their recruiter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually that's a really good point. You were like, so in a way you were kind of a consultant,
Yes.
to multiple firms, even though you were internal. That's a very confusing role now that I'm saying that out loud.
It took a while for me to fully understand it too.
That's fun. That's awesome. I love that. Um, oh, I like this one. What insights from your VC experience do you think hiring managers should adopt when scaling teams in these competitive markets? Like, what advice would you have for them or insights?
Mhm. Um, I think, and I've noticed this in my current company and as a being a consultant for other companies is people are very focused on I think the pedigree of where they're getting their talent. They want the hot company on the list or the Ivy League school. The best talent I found again is that entrepreneurial side. So they again they might not look good on paper. One of my best performers on the customer success team at Glean, she actually worked at Petco. She's customer focused and she's amazing with customers because she worked in customer service for so long. So it's not where you're finding the talent, it's just understanding the kind of skill set that you want and knowing where to pull from that skill set. If you want customer success, look at customer service folks in retail or in other industries. Obviously, vet for technical aptitude, but nowadays most companies use technology, use SaaS applications. We're all kind of using the same technology. So you can get a lot of really hungry folks that are dying to get into tech, have a great skill set, will do a fantastic job in some of those like less sexy company backgrounds.
I love that. Well, I said wow to Petco because I guess I did not. I mean, every time I've been in there, their customer service is fantastic, and I just did not. I don't think of them as like, you hear about certain companies like Rent a Car, Enterprise Rent a Car, and things like that, where they're so Disney, like the training programs are just phenomenal. But I didn't think about Petco, so that's really good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
hmm
Um, so. You know what? I'm gonna actually skip to some of the questions real quick, and then we're gonna go back to we'll go back to some of these other questions if we have time. But if you have more questions, please put them in the Q&A. But we're gonna start going down a couple of them. So this is from someone asking about, I'm struggling with what my next career step looks like. What is the values assessment you took, or do you recommend one?
Yeah, I don't remember the name. If you Google search, a ton come up. Um, and the one I remember doing was it had a lot of just like words listed out, just like different kind of values. And I just remember it was like pick out 10. Now do five, like limit that to this many, and then like limit it to one or two, to really get you to kind of, like usually you're like, yeah, I value this. But then once you really funnel down into like, no, what is your core values? That's what helped me the most. So ones that kind of get down to that root one or two actual values is what I would look for. But again, ton online, some you pay for. I think mine was free. So yeah, Google search, you'll find a good one.
Well, let me actually add on to that, right? So once you figure out the one or two values, right, your core values, right? How did you take that information to find a company that matches that, right? I think I mean, obviously companies have values, right? Did you just look for them and go, hey, like, which like companies have the same values as me, or like how did you approach it that way? I guess I'm curious.
No, that's good. It is hard to vet. I was fortunate to be in a VC where I could understand a lot of these companies and what they were doing and their products, to understand like what values they were actually doing. But and not all companies obviously are going to live the values that they
Hmm.
support. So you have to really do your research and kind of drill into, okay, what does this product actually do? Or what is their mission statement? And does it resonate with me? And then go even further, like who are their customers? Are their customers people I want to be working with? Are they helping industries and does that match what I'm looking to do as well? So you really do need to do your research and kind of go deeper than just like, here's their mission statement.
Yeah, of course. Okay, awesome. Thank you. It's really helpful. Next question. Um, I know a recruiter reached out to you, but if someone is interested in working for a VC, how would you recommend going about that? Are there specific functions that would allow someone to get their foot in the door?
Finance. Yeah, no, this is a great question. Finance, very easy one. There's VCs are probably like 10 investors, 10 to 20 investors, and then 100 finance people or 50 finance people. The finance org is the absolute bread and butter, wheels, keep the wheels running, lights on type of organization, function at any VC. You have to make sure like the funding goes through and the wires are transferred and distributions happen, and they're the busiest too at the VC. So finance is one way if that is your expertise. Ops is another. They have talent is another. Talent teams are small, but that's another way to get your foot in the door. And talking to the talent recruiters, networking with folks, and I mean, what VCs look for a lot, especially if like you want to go on the investor side, is and Sequoia was this way, is actually being an operator in a tech company, a successful tech company, and understanding the landscape there.
Okay, that's amazing. What do you think? got Sequoia excited about your background? I'm just curious. I mean, obviously your background is was really, really good, but do you think it was something specific that got them excited, or did they tell you?
Um, well, my hiring manager got excited because I played World of Warcraft, and so did she.
That's great. Commonality.
Exactly, connecting on human things. But I think the reason the recruiter reached out was my Chase experience. Well known, great institution. Um, so I think that was probably what got the initial thing. And then obviously the recruiter, make friends with your recruiters, they're gonna sell you. So I think once I did my initial interview with the recruiter, she was really able to sell me to that into that role and into Sequoia. They also, I will say, there were two funny things during that interview process. One was the partner at the time, his name's Joe Dobrinsky. He'd been there for like 20 years. And it was interesting for me just from, I think, generational perspective, because one of the questions he asked was like, what does technology mean to you? And I think for his generation, it's obviously different than from my generation. Like I grew up, I mean, I was born before cell phones, but like I grew up, I had a cell phone in high school, right? So at least had that, Facebook, social media, um, the basically all the world's knowledge at my fingertips and like living and breathing in apps and technology in general and was like my my life, right? Like we all kind of live in it now, but I think for him at the time, it was like that their job is to vet like new technology and cool technology, and I think that so he was like looking into that, but I'm like, I think now in this day and age, a lot of people like that's their that's their life. Like we're always looking for the newest phone or the newest set of headphones or just kind of like the newest interesting technology. And especially with the rise of Gen AI, that's like you need to be literate on this stuff. Like AI is not going away, so you do need to embrace it, unfortunately. And it's not going to replace you. I can promise you that. I work for an AI company, but yeah, you will be working with it. So getting AI literacy is very, very important. And then the other thing was they vetted was was me not to be like, I just want to work for Sequoia because it's Sequoia, it's this fancy, beautiful thing. And so some of their vetting questions were around like, it's not like champagne and cocaine all the time like, type of situation. I was like, I get it. Like I've been cleaning up sweat off of yoga floors for the past 6 months. Like I just don't want to do that anymore. And I think that helped them understand like, no, I'm here for the right reasons.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. Um, So we have another question coming in. They said, "Hi Kat, thanks for doing this session. This person has 5 years of CSM experience in a SaaS products and logistics and the logistics domain, but not in AI or tech. I wanted to know what recommendations you have for someone like me if they want to break into the space."
Love this question. Thanks, Harini. So you should be using ChatGPT in your day-to-day life. If you can speak to having just used it personally, even if it's not in your job role, you're going to be ahead of people that haven't touched it, if you want to break into that space. So download it, play with it, use it to, I use it for shopping. Like I will tell you right now, I've used it to recommend a car, recommend my Apple Watch, or like what digital wearable I should do. You can use it to recommend hotels, restaurants, travel plans, where to go. So try just using it in your life, so you can speak to it in an interview when you're talking to someone about it in general. To answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that's a great answer. If you have follow-ups, please go ahead and ask. So okay, so thank you so much for sharing. I mean, I feel like that, like your time there has obviously really, really influenced um, just the way you approach your work and you approach your day to day. So, how do you approach like, I guess, hiring and team building now that you have, this like multifaceted experience?
I think the same as I've always approached it in the recruiting side is
Well, even as like a peer or
as a
as a
oh yeah.
senior like a leader at your company, right? Like I don't only mean recruiting necessarily, right? But like your role has changed from recruiting to like you're in CS now, right? But from my understanding, you do have exposure to the hiring side and to the building side at your current company. So, wanting to understand like how that experience has influenced it from like a CS perspective as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually I want to know kind of Swati your philosophy on hiring because I have my own and I always approach hiring with it. I'm I pretty much have done, I don't know, since we started, I was like third person on the CS team. We are now over 15.
Yeah.
Um
No, I
lots
know.
of interviews. Yeah, huge. Um I think I only said no to one person. I'm get them in, let's see how they do in the role because for the most part people who like yeah, past success is indicative of future success. So I definitely like want to know have you done something like this before? You know, great if they have. Yeah, let's go for it. But jobs are a lot like relationships, and this is my philosophy on hiring in general. There are jobs and companies that will nurture you and help you grow and help you be your best self, just like relationships. There are jobs and companies that will not bring out the best in you, and that's not necessarily you. It's the culture, it's the chain of command, it's the role itself. Maybe there's a lot of factors that can go into why you aren't succeeding in a role. And that's again like a relationship. That's the time where you need to break up and go find someone or something new or different or focus on yourself and take that time. So I'm eager to hire. I think get people in, see if we jive, date, see how it works, and then if it's not a life marriage, we go our separate ways.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I think I do approach it a little bit differently. I think that it is. I agree with you. Like that, it's funny when I started in recruiting a long time ago, the whole dating analogy thing, I used to not like that. I'm like, what? It's not like dating. But the more and more you're actually in hiring, it is a lot like dating, and you have to kind of accept that analogy. But I think for me, I think for it's really, we really focus on like obviously past success, right? Behavioral interviews, all of that. But I think also like what the future of the candidate is, like what they want in the future, what their goals are, how they want to grow. And is there that like two-way match, right? Like we really focus on the mutual fit. And I think when we talk about the mutual fit, it's really about like, hey, what can the candidate offer the company right now? But also what can the company offer the candidate now, but also in the future, right? Can they grow together? So for us, we really look at that long term. So we're definitely more selective, it seems like, on the kind of getting them in with our client. I wanted to make sure like, hey, this is a training takes so much time, the hiring process takes it's so much time. So I think that for us, it's really just being a little bit more selective, but making sure that there's that future. We're trying to future proof it a little bit to make sure that the next few years, at least they have goals that match.
Definitely. That and I definitely vetted for that as a recruiter. And yes, I still vet for that. And what do you want to do?
Yeah, exactly. What do you want to do now, but later too, right?
Mhm.
So I think we had, do we have a follow-up question here? Oh no. Okay. I think we're all good.
Irene, put your LinkedIn and we'll connect. I don't know if yeah, my LinkedIn was at the top. I don't know if it saves the I'll put it in again.
Okay, awesome.
Go.
So we just have a few minutes left. So if anybody has any other questions, please add them. Otherwise, I have a couple more questions for Kat that I'm gonna keep going with. But are there any like common pitfalls you see like internal teams, hiring managers should avoid when building teams in these high growth environments, whether you're taking that experience from Sequoia or your current company?
Yes. I think the most common pitfall, especially in the early stages, is just hiring your friends, your network, or people that have been at, the last company. I've noticed if you kind of just target the one kind of company that matches what your company is doing, you start to just bring people in from that, and then it just turns into that culture again, and it doesn't actually create your own company culture. So I would, what?
That's a great point. I love that point. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely recommend not just hiring from one logo or, those friends that you worked with at that one logo, because if you want that lasting company and you want to make your own impression on it, you need to hire a different background so you can set that kind of culture and standard.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm just going to add to that because I love that point so much. That like when you're hiring similar types of people or similar types of network, to your point, like it's not only that company culture, but it's like it might not even be like a culture you're connected to. You're just trying to like replicate success from another company, and that doesn't mean that that's how you're going to be successful. So I think that I would just add on to that. But I love that point. That was awesome. Um, and this isn't necessarily something we talked about too much, but is there a um when people are looking for positions, right? Like, do you think that is there anything they should look out for, whether they're looking for like bootstrapped versus VC versus PE companies? I know we haven't really talked a lot about PE on this call, but just curious about if that is something that um they should look at when deciding between opportunities.
Yeah. So it's funny. I have a lot of clients that are in the PE space and the VC space. I see them as the same. They don't know, but their structures are very the same. I will say, I did a talk. I did a little TED talk on like the difference for Glean and like the salespeople that were trying to like sell to these folks, and I think so PEs, you know, they do a lot of research. They take over very large industries, very established industries. And VCs, I think I made a gambling analogy where they're going to throw money at a lot of different stuff because 90% of the companies they invest in don't actually work out. Whereas PCs, they have a much smaller portfolio. The stakes are much bigger, the price tag is much bigger. So I understand why they don't want to be equated, but the motions are very, very similar. So so I forgot the question, Swati. Sorry.
Hey, I was just saying, is there something that professionals should look for when deciding between opportunities between bootstrapped versus VC versus PE, right? Because those are the three, I would say, types of companies mostly, right? Like in terms of SaaS and tech companies, right? They're either going to be VC backed, PE backed, or like bootstrapped.
Yes, yes. Yes. So what I vet for, and I think this kind of goes to like what you're looking for. But I do vet for like what technology stack they're using. Maybe this is because I ran a technology stack and like it's important. Like I like my tools, I like the good tools. And PE firms, just given their industry, don't always have the best, like most forward technology. They are kind of stuck with either what they're, using the company that they are, running. And they don't actually get to choose their technology, whereas VCs get to choose. So if that's important to you, that's something to consider. Um, the the life cycle of the job. PE firms are you know sticking with those companies for a turnaround for a very, very long time, and VCs, you know, it's a higher turnover. There's the rocket ships. They're successful, then they have their events, or there's the ones that end up in the unfortunate VC graveyard. And then the bootstraps, I think, are the most exciting because You have the ability to make it your own. Early stage startups, you can create your own structure, higher risk, but again, higher reward. But they will not always have the technology that you want to use either. So that is important to me. I do like to have really good technology because it makes me a better worker, I think, and I can be more productive.
Yeah. Oh, I love that point. That's such a good point. And I don't think that that's something that people ask about all the time. So that's great advice. So thank you.
Mhm.
I do want to end our time together with the last question of like, are there any current trends in the hiring space that you're seeing that are affecting startups and more established companies that maybe you'd want to highlight?
The elephant in the room, right? It's generative AI. Um, yeah, which I kind of talked about, but either you're joining a company that uses it already, that's has a full AI strategy, that's vetting it. So knowing how to work with it, being AI literate is going to be kind of key, no matter what industry you're joining, because it is affecting all industries from what I've seen. Actually, I just did a really great webinar, shameless plug, a few weeks ago for the National CIO Review. And we talked about this a lot. It was with the head of IT at Bill.com and the head of IT at Redis. And this was something we kept coming back to, and that definitely resonated with a lot of folks, was just that AI literacy component. Um, and being able to speak to it. So, if you don't have it now, get ChatGPT. And if you're not, if your company is not considering its AI strategy, you start having that conversation. See if you can be on the panel, or an AI council, and just like start trying to get them to get there, because they're already going to be behind if they're not there. Um, so that, and again, it's not going to replace you, but it will change your job, um, in general, because you will probably have to work with this technology in a sense. And and so, just consider how that might affect your day-to-day roles as well. Um, I still don't think it'll replace recruiting. I know it's tried a million times.
It keeps trying. It keeps trying.
Keeps trying. It's never going to get there. The human touch is so important.
It is so important.
Uh, but that's the biggest trend. I think we'll have to see what the new administration can do for trends and uncertainty, um, but I really think that generative AI and what Glean has deemed work AI is going to be the next biggest wave across all industries. But our philosophy is it's not replacing your job. It is just going to be your assistant. It's going to be, you will basically have your own intern. That's pretty darn good. Still needs correcting. Um, but that's going to do a lot of this work that you probably don't want to do for you, and just help make you more productive and be able to focus on more strategic stuff as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think we've been seeing a lot of that. The people who don't know AI are unfortunately, may be replaced with people that do know AI. And because it's becoming such an important skill that companies are starting to ask about, right? So I don't agree, I completely agree with you. It's not going to replace your job, but it is going to become and is becoming a critical skill to become more efficient in your job. So highly, highly recommend that. Completely agree with that. Thank you so much for the conversation today, Kat. This was so fun. I loved learning about your background and your history and kind of why you made these decisions and what you've learned, right? I think a lot of people just don't have your lens of the multi-lens. And I think that it was so helpful to talk about today. So thank you so much.
I loved it. Appreciated all the great questions and everyone participating. And Swati, it's so great to talk with you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Everyone will have our announcement soon. We have our next webinar in January, but if I don't talk to you, have a wonderful holiday season and New Year, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Bye-bye.